Hello. So as it's Tuesday, I'm hopping online to answer a couple of questions if anybody has any questions at all. But I'll wait and see if anyone's around and if anyone has any questions that they want to ask. Say hi when you're there so I can see who's around and I can say hello back. Or give me a little like or a love heart or something so I can see who's there. I'm just going to hang on for a minute and see if anyone has any questions that they want me to answer. Let me just share this actually on another phone, if I can get it working, so that we can try and get more people on and get some questions. Say hi so I can see who's around. Say hello so I know I'm not on my own. Okay, let's have a look. I'm fully clothed under a cover because it's getting really cold now. Really cold. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. My reception's not brilliant, so I think there's a little bit of a delay. So if someone does ask questions, there might be a little bit of a delay. So you'll have to be patient with me. Okay, so there's quite a lot of angry faces again, which I've had before, but I'm not really sure what I've said that could possibly make anybody angry just yet. Okay, there's some love hearts. That's nice. So let me know that you're there. If anybody is using angry faces, let me know what you're angry about, because I'm not really sure. And it can flag up posts on Facebook as being inappropriate or not okay if there's a lot of angry faces. So I'd rather the video didn't get blocked, but if somebody is angry, then let me know why. Well, I haven't said anything just yet. Wait, excuse me. I don't know, I've never tried it.
You'll try.
Okay, so I'm just trying to share the group. So has anyone got any questions that they would like me to answer? Let me know if you have. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Sorry I'm looking away. I'm just trying to wait for this other phone to load so that I can share this video and see if we've got anybody else around that might have any questions. Say hi. Let me see who's there. Hi, Maisie. Okay, so hi, Dean. Where's Maitland? Is it? It's not in the UK, is it? Where are you? Whereabouts are you in the world? That's what I love about Facebook and doing these lives. It could literally be anywhere. Okay. Let's have a look. Okay, so I'm just sharing them now. So does anybody have any questions at all that they would like me to answer? Anything at all? I'm very quiet tonight. I don't know if it's just quite slow to let me know if anyone has asked any questions. But for any of you that are new to the page, then I will always pop on a Tuesday unless I've got something specific on, which I don't usually on a Tuesday, but yeah, I'll just pop online on a Tuesday. Oh, in Australia. Oh, lovely. Then I've been to Australia, but typical Brits. I've only been to I'll say only, yeah, I went to Sydney and it was around Christmas time and it was the most strange experience cooking a Christmas turkey and sprouts and vegetables in ridiculously hot heat. To say I was sweating is an understatement, but I had a fabulous time. Went to New Zealand as well, which I also really loved. In fact, I didn't just go to Sydney. I went to Melbourne. I really liked Melbourne. Went to Byron Bay, Nimbin, and a few other places. But yes, a wonderful country. So, Maisie, I've had to cut some really toxic people. Well, that's never a bad thing, is it? We don't need toxic people in our lives. If we are feeling uncomfortable with people, then we don't need to be around them. Okay, so hi Derek, has anyone got any questions they would like me to answer? If you have, fire away. I was doing the private coaching call in my private group yesterday. So this will link in. Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Let's have a look. Coping with overthinking. Can you go through again, please, how to just let it go? Well, the thing is, there's not really anything to do, because the way that thoughts work, the natural way that thoughts work, is that they come and they go. They pass all by themselves. The problem that we have, or the problem that people find themselves in, is that they're in the habit of trying to interfere with those thoughts and keeping them around for longer. So the analogy I used yesterday in the private coaching group that I run, we have 2 calls a week where I answer everybody's questions, and the example I use is it's almost like there's a storm outside and it's absolutely pouring down with rain. Trying to stop yourself thinking and wondering why you're overthinking and beating yourself up and criticising yourself and all of that stuff in that moment. Oh, why am I doing this again? And it's so annoying, etc., etc. It's like being stood outside in a storm, soaking wet and trying to dry yourself with a towel outside in the storm. Like, it's the most pointless thing ever, because the towel's just going to get soaking wet and the storm's going to keep pouring until the storm passes. And it's like that with thoughts, you know. They will eventually pass. They do pass actually quite quickly, surprisingly, on their own. But we do often get into a habit. So when I was really particularly anxious, which would come from having lots of anxious thoughts, then I would kind of realise I was in that situation and then try so many things so drastically, so urgently to try and stop it, to try and fix myself, to try and do everything in my power to almost dry myself off with the towel outside in a storm, which wasn't working, surprisingly. And by me interfering and trying to fix them and wondering why they're there and how do I stop them and why me and all of that stuff was just keeping them there for longer. And that's why, you know, I explore the principles with people. I coach people in this area, because actually it's quite hard often for us to do nothing, to feel that actually we can just allow things to pass. But what it really boils down to, hi Rachel, what it really boils down to is becoming comfortable with the discomfort that can bring. So the thoughts create the feelings. So uncomfortable thoughts, anxious thoughts create uncomfortable feelings, anxious feelings, and that brings a level of discomfort. And when we feel really uncomfortable with that, we will often get into a situation where we feel like we need to run away, we need to avoid it, we need it to go instantly for us to be okay. When actually that's not the case. We are okay. Yes, we might be uncomfortable, but underneath that, we are okay. And interestingly, more often than not for people, that peace of mind from that massive overthinking thought storm, that peace of mind is quite often only just round the corner. But what stops people naturally settling from a thought storm is wondering, quizzing it, beating themselves up for having it in the first place, questioning why it was ever there. All of that stuff is what holds on to it and keeps it there for longer. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle, really. Hi, David. So, Dean, I'm so upset. It's my son's birthday in one more day and I have not seen him for 2 years. I'm really sorry to hear that. It must be difficult. And I think with stuff like that, we just have to allow ourselves to feel how we feel about it. Because you're going to have thoughts about the fact that that's the situation, and then that's going to create feelings. So, you know, it's important that you just take care of yourself and know that actually these feelings that you're feeling right now might be quite prominent because it's around his birthday, so it's very topical and you will have thoughts about it, but those will start to settle and you will feel probably a bit more peaceful about it, you know, within a bit of time. But yeah, it is difficult. So has anyone got any other questions? I'll answer another question. If anyone has one that they want to ask, fire away. Fire away. Just so that you know, actually, if you've not seen my post, hi Hartlepool, hi Scott. I like the towel and the storm. I've not looked at it that way before. Good, okay. I like my silly little analogies, because actually I think sometimes we really need to take it right back to basics. Like, I have been criticised in the past for simplifying things too much, but I just don't see why we need to overcomplicate it, because it's overcomplicating things that get us in that situation in the first place. So actually, I just sometimes think the simple examples are the best, because, you know, the next time you're in a thought storm and you're trying to, why am I thinking like this? And when will it go? And I've got this on tomorrow and I could do without it. And what if it gets worse? And then you might just pop into your mind, oh, I'm outside in a storm trying to dry myself with a towel. And it might just give you a little insight that you need in that moment. I've had anxiety for 5 years. Why won't it go? Because there is some level of resistance there, Francesca, with the majority, well, everybody that I work with, myself included, when I explored all of this stuff to help with my own anxiety. If it's still there, if we're still in that cycle, like, anxiety doesn't disappear completely, but it doesn't need to stop us living our lives, and it doesn't need to be the first thing and the last thing we think of when we wake up and when we go to sleep. Like, that's not a healthy, you know, that's not sort of an average level anxiety, is it? Because everybody experiences anxiety to some degree, because we all have anxious, worried thoughts about the future, and the what ifs, and etc, etc. But if you are feeling like it's there and it's really prominent and it's not going anywhere, it means there's a level of resistance. Hi Vic. There's a level of resistance which, okay, the daughter's just telling me she's nipping to the shop. There's a level of resistance that is keeping you in the cycle. And I know this might sound really silly and really frustrating in a way, but you're probably trying too hard. What you need to do is understand more about how it all works. So when I teach people in my coaching group, there's some people from my coaching group on here actually at the moment. When I teach in my coach group, all I am doing is exploring how all of this stuff works, pointing you in the direction of where your mental health is and your innate well-being, how thoughts work. I am not teaching you something that you need to learn in order to develop. It's not a skill you need to develop. It's actually something that's already within you, but you just don't see it. So I'm just pointing people back to what they've already got access to, but they've just forgotten because it's got completely clouded with all the bullshit thinking. How long does it take for anxiety to settle down? Are there any techniques you can help to alleviate? Okay. Anxiety settles, feelings of anxiety settle as soon as your thinking settles. So if your anxiety is over a long period of time and it isn't settling, it means that you are constantly feeding it with more anxious thoughts, more anxious thoughts, more anxious thoughts. So that's why it's important to understand and explore how that thinking aspect, how that works. And you get to the point where you stop believing every thought that you have, because again, that's the difficulty with a lot of people, is that they have thoughts, they have regular irrational or worried thoughts about the future, and have them so many times that they then become kind of like a conditioned belief where they believe them to be true. And once we start to explore that, you then start to see actually that no thoughts that we have are actually true. They're just thoughts, because you know, something that happened 10 minutes ago, something that happened an hour ago is gone. It's gone. It's no longer happening. And things that we worry about in the future and what might happen, again, are no more or less guaranteed than anything else. So it's exploring that sort of stuff. How do you cope with fight or flight situations? Okay, David, this is where people often get stuck, because when you're in fight or flight quite a lot and your adrenaline levels are higher and go through the roof, and you can be very quick to kind of feed that, really, and keep, I suppose, we get into this cycle where we have the fight or flight, we have the physical symptoms, the adrenaline levels are through the roof, then something that might appear small at other times feels massive because our sensitivity levels have altered, and so we're kind of ready to go quite quick. much more heightened, I suppose. And the way we deal with it, often what happens is people are fearful of that situation. People feel really overwhelmed with the physical symptoms. A lot of what I end up talking to people about that I coach is the physical symptoms, and actually helping them understand that they're not to be feared, because the less scared of them we are, the quicker they settle. You know, when adrenaline is pumped into your body, it actually only lasts for minutes before it then comes out of your system. Yet some people feel like they're in fight or flight for days on end, and that's because you're constantly almost like reigniting that pump of adrenaline, really, through your anxious thinking. So the best way to cope with them is to understand them, is to know more about what's going on, and to understand actually that it's your body and your system doing exactly what it should be with what you're instructing it to do. Had a blowout yesterday with anxiety and took an overdose. I'm really sorry to hear that. It's important that if you are feeling that overwhelmed at times that you are, then that's leading to behaviours like that will put you at risk. You go and speak to your GP or speak to somebody that is local. I mean, I try and help as many people on here as I can online, but obviously, you know, if you are feeling overwhelmed to that extent, then it is important that you go and get support locally to where you are. You know, even if that involves ringing the Samaritans or, you know, Google services in your area, emergency services. If you get to that point, I would absolutely encourage anybody to just reach out to someone else, because, and actually you might think, well, what can someone else do for me when I'm in that moment? When we're in a moment where we're making decisions and we're having thoughts that actually would be better not to be here, or be better to actually end our lives, we are clearly not thinking with any clarity. We are thinking from a really distorted place of thinking, almost like we are at such a low state of mind, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. That state is so low that the quality of your thoughts gets really diluted. And so it's really hard to think clearly. And for us to try and solve the problem in that moment through the thinking that's created it in the first place is really unhelpful. So actually just reaching out to somebody, to anybody, doesn't even necessarily need to be professional. What that can do is it can sometimes just allow them to help you with the clarity of thinking in that moment, and that in itself will then start to shift your thinking. So I would really encourage anybody that feels overwhelmed like that. It's a very isolating, scary place to feel like that. And the minute somebody else is aware of what's going on for you, even if it's a neighbour or someone on the other end of the phone or whoever, that in itself can give a shift in perspective, because we kind of know then that we're not alone, if that makes sense. So I would really urge, even if you think, well, what good would it do to speak to someone else? Trust me, it will give you a shift in perspective. Just picking up the phone, speaking to someone, even if it's a complete stranger at the Samaritans, that's the best thing to do. And I'm glad that you're still here, Darren. Okay. So you might have seen a post that I put on yesterday. It's Mental Health Awareness Day on the 10th of October. So I am going to do a one-page thing on my website with lots of resources for people to have a look at. I'm going to encourage people to sit down on that day or stand up and have a 5 to 10 minute conversation with someone, with a loved one, with a colleague, with anybody. Not in like a, right, let's tell each other our deepest, darkest secrets, but actually I'm going to give, also put some things on there that you can download, which will just be conversation starters around, did you know this about how the mind works? So it's more like a little educational thing that will be really helpful. And I put the hashtag just enough, because sometimes those conversations are just enough for somebody's shift in perspective, and I don't believe we do them enough. So I really want to encourage people, and I'm going to put the resources on there for you in order to just start up some conversations. And I'd love feedback as to how your conversations have gone. Literally only 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be lots. 5 to 10 minutes, whether it be with your family, your partner, colleagues, anything. Somebody's in the park walking their dog, like, it doesn't matter. Let's have a look. So I do overthink everything, from making decisions about going to the shops, what, when, where, and how I do things. I have complex PTSD, and all of my behaviour is driven by fear, fight or flight every day. I'm 47 and still battling the effects of trauma from childhood, and it continues to mess my life up daily. I was recently advised by a CPN that until I deal with the trauma, that I will forever struggle. That frightens the life out of me. Okay, so Scott, I would, like, what does deal with the trauma mean? Does it mean accept what happened? You might never accept what happened. Does it mean go over it all and try and figure it all out? Like, what does that actually mean? I don't believe that you need to go over everything in your past in order for you to move forward. I disagree. If that's what they're implying, I disagree. And I know I'm putting myself out on a bit of a limb there, because people who, work specifically with trauma, etc., and so, used to being in the detail, and we have to go over it and we have to break you down in order to build you up, etc., etc. I am a qualified psychotherapist, and I have been trained in a similar way. But what I know is that when I came across these 3 principles, these were the only thing that completely changed my relationship with anxiety. And I also know that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people who've used these same principles with various coaches across the world to also get relief with PTSD. And it doesn't, if you want to talk about that trauma, if you want to process that in some way and have somebody listen, then that may be good for you. If your gut instinct is saying to you, you don't want to go there, you don't have to. You don't have to. Scott, will you do me a favour? Will you send me a private message? Because I have a podcast that might be of interest for you to listen to. It's all about PTSD and trauma. It talks about, it's somebody, a psychiatrist in America, who is talking about trauma and PTSD from a perspective of the 3 principles that I also coach. So it will give you an understanding of what I'm talking about, and hopefully you'll hear something in that might want you to then that might encourage you to then explore it further. But please don't feel like you are so broken that unless you dread over all of the past and pick it apart and tick all the boxes and be at peace with everything, that you can't move on and have peace of mind, because I completely disagree. Okay. Now, some people may do that and then get peace of mind. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So I hope that gives you a little glimmer of hope in another direction, because the idea of you trying to get peace by doing something that frightens the life out of you is not that helpful, is it? So I want you to know that you don't have to do that. And I want you to start by messaging me, and I will send you that podcast that I'll encourage you to listen to. Okay. Hope that helps, Scott. Helen. Okay, I'll answer this one from Helen before I finish up then. Yes. Obviously, when we have our hormonal cycle, we things happen in our body, things are changing. Like, I don't know about you, I get pains, I get uncomfortable, I feel sick, I have some horrible symptoms. Scott, thank you. I don't want to revisit such nightmares again. Good on you. And I'm glad that you're digging your heels in with that, because you don't blooming have to, okay? And yeah, I think you'll really like this podcast. And if there's anything in it that you don't understand or you want to ask more, then you can come to me and ask me. But you're all right. You don't need to go over it all again, I promise. Yeah, so it can be linked to cycle. When stuff's going on in my body, but again, it does, not every single female gets anxious when it's their cycle. That's because it's not directly causing anxiety. However, it is causing changes in their body. And if you're someone who's in a bit of a cycle with anxiety and tends to overthink a lot, then you will also overthink those physical changes, to the point where some people might think, oh, I'm due on in 3 days and I usually get really low. And then all of a sudden they're just focusing on the fact they're going to get low. And then they, lo and behold, start to get low, because what we're thinking becomes our experience. So yes, it can change the way that you're thinking. You can absolutely, feel more sensitive. But actually, again, the more you explore about this and the less you overthink things in general, you will find that also around your cycle will get easier. So I used to be terrible. I'm not so bad now because my anxiety isn't the same. However, I do still struggle a little bit around that time. But I just give myself permission to do that. I just kind of accept it. And it's like, yeah, I'm maybe a bit out of sorts for a few days, but I know it's not permanent, and it'll just pass. It's just something I deal with. So I hope that helps a little bit. So it's not a direct cause, but you overthinking the shifts and the changes in your body and the mood fluctuation, maybe you overthinking that is creating anxious thinking, which then creates feelings of anxiety. Okay, so I'll leave that there. I would love if you found this video at all helpful in any way, then please do share it. I'm going to be sharing, as I said, some stuff for Mental Health Awareness Day, or I'll pop a comment in here for anyone. My new book is coming out it's been delivered in less than 2 weeks. So if anybody wants to have a look at that, it's called Anxiety is a Fucker, or is it? Because actually by the end of the book, I would hope people would realise that it all is not as it seems. And actually it's just a very normal physiological response to our overthinking. So yeah, I will leave it there. I will be back on next Tuesday. There is a couple of people on here from my private coaching group, so obviously if you have any further questions, pop them in for our Thursday coaching call, and I'll hopefully see you all next Tuesday. Thanks for joining me, and as I say, give it a share. The more people we have, the more questions I get, and the better it is for everybody, because we can just keep learning. Okay, take care everyone. Bye for now.